is leading the innovation group. Mr. Vadarajan Krish with Induct Software. Both of them have come from Bangalore to be with us today. And Mr. Jaimin Shah, who's also the regional chairperson of the Gujarat Regional Council of ICBC, as well as the co-founder of Dev Technologies, which has an office in Toronto. So I will invite them to now start. Just want to say that at the end of this session, we will be having an MOU signed between the Sri Lanka Canada Business Council and ICBC. So please do stay on and witness the signature. And also to thank our session partners for this session. One is, of course, Dev Technologies, Mr. Jaimin Shah, and OpenText, who have been kind enough to support this ICT session. Thank you, Rakesh. If you could just take over.
Thank you. Thank you, Nadia. Good afternoon, everyone. It's my privilege to moderate this session. Okay. So it's good afternoon, everyone. It's my privilege to moderate this session. We can't, in this industry, in ICT, I can't take the previous statement in the previous one that innovation and financial services don't go together. I think in this industry, we live and die by innovation. So if you look at last 15 to 20 years, ICT has really changed the way we live, we play, and we work. Everything is impacted by ICT. If you look at ICT as an industry, it has provided great increase in productivity in developed nations and to address problems like aging population. It has helped in improving the quality of life for millions of people. ICT has also helped in e-governance and improving the transparency in governance as well as reducing corruption. So there are huge contributions made by this industry. But at the same time, you will notice that this industry goes through a dramatic change in technology every 5 to 10 years. So only way to survive in this industry is innovate. If you don't innovate, you will be out of existence very soon. And if you look at last 5 years, the big companies which have really become large corporations, you look at Google, you look at Facebook, they have used internet and social media to become large corporations from really startups. At the same time, you will notice various large technical corporations struggling or almost dead. So that brings us to an interesting question to start off this conversation. Is often there is a perception that small companies are nimble and very innovative, whereas large companies struggle to be innovative because of various challenges. So I'll pose this question to Varadarajan to get this started on what should large companies focus on to change so that they are innovative.
Good afternoon to all of you. Thank you, Rakesh and Nadira, for this opportunity. I would like to really set the background, These large companies like Procter & Gamble, they had one major challenge was, you must be all aware of the Springle chips. They wanted to print. They had those kind of line of items where they wanted to print, and they didn't have the technology. And they had spent about $60 million US at the time. This is way back about 15, 20 years ago. And then they realized that it's better to open it up. The challenge was opened up. And you won't believe this. There was a small company in Italy. It was a bakery. And the attached bakery was having this technology. And so they could buy this technology instead of investing. They bought it for something like $12 million. And this technology, as you see today, is one of the biggest sellers for Procter & Gamble, the Pringle chips. And so the reason I wanted to bring it up is it was a small company. The bakery is such a small, nondescript compared to Procter & Gamble giant. And the processes that big companies have is actually something against innovation. Typically what happens is large companies have their own lethargy, they have their own inertia. They don't want to change the process, the way they've been doing things every day. And so when this kind of new ideas or new technologies need to come, they need to look at SMEs. And that's where collaborative innovation comes. And we have enough number of examples of that. So we have also seen why WhatsApp was bought out by Facebook. One was that the Facebook kind of companies were already large. They had a big footprint. And they wanted to see to that, one of the competition shouldn't take over WhatsApp. That was one reason, they bought them out before others could do it. In fact, just a week before that, Google had given them an offer of 10 billion. But what happened was this offer was up by Facebook, and they got it at 19 billion. And then what happened was this, in the process, he was able to add a concept that was not there. And in India, we have seen many times that people have been using Facebook to promote their product and services. And what's happening, the deals are happening through WhatsApp. So we've been reading this kind of, very innovative ways small companies have been utilizing the social media.
Thanks, Vardarajan. You want to add anything, Jamin, here?
Yeah, there are lots of things we see day in, day out when it comes to innovation, because in IT is not now standalone as an IT, but IT is an integral part of our day-to-day job, where innovation like missed call, that is an innovation innovated by Indians who gave a code word to his friend or his family, that if I give you missed call, you come out. So these are the small things which have been innovated by using technology. So when it comes to IT, we have to innovate, otherwise you go out from the industry. So down the line, I see innovation that when you see someone, and if you have some kind of retina or lens into your eye, and automatical virtual screen come into your in front, and you recognize that guy or that person, that he is this person. So this kind of innovation comes and will definitely come.
Thanks, Jamin. One of the things to lead on to from here is that if you see, I've referred to some research, and they say that in the next 5 to 7 years, innovation would drive, business and technical innovation would drive $250 billion worth of business, right? And at the same time, you notice that a lot of Indian IT companies have done exceedingly well in the last 10 to 15 years. But a lot of that success of Indian IT companies is driven through outsourcing and offshoring. And I was at the NASSCOM event recently, leadership event, and the general thought was that the wave of outsourcing and offshoring is really matured. And do we have a second wave coming? And are we ready in ICT to tap into the second wave? And the second wave really is through technical innovation and business innovation. If you see the biggest trends in IT industry today are, it's an acronym which we are infamous for the industry, is SMAC, which is social media, mobility, analytics, and cloud. So these are the new trends. And other than that, there's a fifth trend, which is Internet of Things, or M2M, you call machine to machine. So these 5 trends, there is analyst research pointing that by 2020, there is $225 billion business which Indian IT companies can tap into if they invest into these technologies. Now, the question what we lead into from here is what should Indian IT companies and global IT companies focus on and invest on to tap into these technical and business innovations rather than just focus on outsourcing, which is within the industry seen as easy money because we do the same thing for less by using labor arbitrage, right? So how do we move to this next trend? Vardarajan, you want to get started?
So, definitely we have seen this, like you mentioned, many of these specific challenges that we've seen today come from, different verticals. And, we see that mainly when you look at the kind of product development, see, we should move away from being services country, now there is no dispute that India is the developer in terms of providing services, support, and so on. There's no questions about that. But we need to also utilize the strength, the talent that we have to build new products. And that is the next revolution that we're going to see. And we have to tap into the huge youth population that we have, the talent that is there in engineering schools, and business schools to create products. And many of the initiatives are already on, like the NASSCOM's 10,000 startups, and we have seen similarly, many other universities are doing their bit. The DST is doing its bit. There are venture funds created by state governments, and so on. So all these initiatives are actually going to lead to some of these changes. But we're seeing still a lot of work is going on in creating a company. I can say about 5,000 to 6,000 companies are there in the services sector. Once actually, even I started a company, way back in 2000 and went public with it. So it's not very difficult to start a services company. But what is the challenge is to create a product. So what happens is today, many companies have invested into their, let's say, innovation department or innovation product lines and so on. And they are trying to productionize some of these services. And then try to offer this, for example, Finacle is a good example from Infosys. There are many others, they try to productionize something which they've been doing over and over and try to deliver it as a product, around that, so that it's a kind of a library that they can start. It's a kind of a building block around which they can offer services.
Thanks. It is also called as industrialization of outsourcing. You want to add anything at this point on specifically on SMAC and Internet of Things? How companies in India can leverage that?
Yeah, SMAC, yes. Nowadays, our IT companies, they are just going ahead for social media, where they are just concentrating and on data crunching, big data. What they are looking for nowadays, because of outsourcing is now matured, so they are looking for SLA kind of outsourcing, where entire development happens in India. So I agree with Vadarajan that where companies should think about product. The issue, but the issue with product is we don't find fund. When it comes to small companies like us, we don't find fund. Nobody is here to give us fund. Where in North America, US, Canada, there are lots of venture fund. They give fund to these small companies or startup companies. I think we'll discuss it in detail later on. But there are lots of opportunity from Canada where you can fund those startup or those innovative products in India, and we can jointly create a product.
Thanks, Jaimin. And I'll jump into that question directly, although you've gone a little out of order. But I'll jump into that question directly. That Minister Sara also mentioned that there are accelerators set up here. And if you look at the ecosystem of startup in Canada, it's fairly mature. There are a set of, I think, more than 20 accelerators. There are mentors. And there's a lot of access to easy capital for such ventures. Whereas if you look at India, there's a huge advantage in India of demography, as well as technically talented people who are, and a spirit of entrepreneurship. So there's lots of ideas coming, but what is lacking is, as Jaimin mentioned, easy access of capital, management support, and the question really is how Canada and India can leverage their strengths in this area of startup ecosystem and help flourish this industry. And also linked question is, how do we work together? We heard earlier today that there are some areas of strength for Canada or areas of interest, like energy, mining, financial services, or healthcare. How can both countries work together so that a lot of innovation is driven into these industries, so that Canada can get a lot of innovations in the area of interest for Canada?
I definitely think that risk capital is something, India is risk averse. And, we need to change that mindset. It's a cultural thing. We need to learn from other countries like the US or Israel. I'm told that Bill Gates goes with the shopping bag every year to one country, that's Israel. And he has about $300 million available all the time to buy companies in Israel. And, I'm just wondering why, we can't do this in India. We have so much talent. We have technology prowess. It's proven. And, we need to just tap and create a culture for that, people failing and starting over again. In India, Indian culture, for your information, we don't tolerate failure. And, so I have a good friend who wanted to start a product company. So he used to work for a government firm, and he quit the company, completely. Because in India, you can go back to the job after 2-3 years. But, he didn't want to have any connection with the government. So what he did, he resigned his job, much against his father-in-law's wish. And, today the rest is history. He's created the product. So what I'm trying to tell you is that not everyone is endowed with that kind of a culture or risk-taking appetite. And, we need to change that probably from the school level. We need to introduce that concept of taking risks, failing, and doing it again and again.
Thanks, Vardarajan. I wanted to move to another topic which is obviously linked, is India has currently about 850 million mobile connections. And the first communication device most of the people have is a mobile phone. They never had a PC, they never had an internet connection. So directly they have jumped on to this technology. So there's lots of innovation happening in the space of mobile, focused around mobile banking or even financial inclusion, and distribution of social money to the bottom of the pyramid. And similarly, if you look at another related area of healthcare, GE as a company, they had a ECG machine which was about $5,000, and every ECG you take, it used to cost $20. And it was fixed ECG machine, which was not mobile. And they looked at the challenge in India of rural India, where there was need for a possibly low-cost machine, low maintenance, and they innovated and created a new ECG machine which just cost $800. And it is mobile, easy to maintain, easy to operate, right? And this was developed for India, but now it has really transformed their business and is exported to 90 countries worldwide, right? So this drives into an area of frugal innovation. How can we do frugal innovation in India? And a lot of innovation is driven in India because of scarcity of resources. And possibly Canada is not used to that kind of environment. So at the same time, how can Canada get the benefit of this frugal innovation and export some of this back to Canada in today's challenging economic environment? So I'll give this to Jaimin to start off.
Though healthcare is Vardarajan's a pet subject, I know that. But extending my reply to what Rakesh said, that in India, we have lots of opportunity when it comes to telemedicine. There are companies, but still we have not implemented properly into villages, and there are huge opportunity when it comes to big companies or SMEs from Canada to invest into or tap this particular industry in India. I know, I come from Gujarat, so I know there are lots of opportunity and there are innovative ideas where government is trying to tap those people. But coming back to telemedicine, I see huge investment where, Sarah, you can bring those technology company from Canada, and we can find a proper partner over here. But when it comes to healthcare, let Vardarajan give.
Yeah, I'll just add a few more lines because I'm sure he will cover it in great detail before I go to him. Two challenges with respect to healthcare which Canada faces at this point of time. Obviously, there are many challenges in India as well. But one is around aging population. Life expectancy in Canada is 81 years. And there's 15% of population which is aging population. And another challenge is it's a vast country with a small population. So there are remote communities, and make healthcare available to all those remote communities. That's a challenge. So what I wanted to pose really to a question to Vardarajan is that currently Canada invests about more than $200 billion annually. So how, I know you have done a lot of work in collaborative innovation and open innovation in the space of healthcare all over the world. So how India and Canada can benefit from collaborative innovation and open innovation in the space of healthcare?
Thank you. That's a good question. See, we have built something called the Open Innovation Center for Healthcare in India. This is one of its kind. What we have done is we brought all the stakeholders. It is like universities, research institutions, healthcare companies like Siemens, Philips, and GE together. And we have posed some of the challenges. And even the government institutions like the Jawaharlal Rural Health Mission is involved. And we have seen that some of the challenges that we find in India are very unique, but this could solve some of the problems overseas. So I would come back to that, the good example of GE's ECG machine. In India, this machine wouldn't sell. So GE tried its best. It was so expensive, nobody could afford. And what they did was they realized they don't have to have so many buttons on the ECG machine. All they need was an on-off and a print. And so they just modified the screen, and the rest is history, as they say. And this is one of the best-selling products for GE in Europe. Can you believe that? So they've developed a product for India. So it's a classic example of reverse innovation. They did this for India, but it became a best-selling product in Europe and elsewhere in the world. So there are a number of examples. Now I will touch upon this collaborative innovation for the paucity of time, is that we are creating a huge network worldwide. Why in healthcare? Because the costs are rising everywhere in the world. Providing healthcare is rising, and so we need to innovate. And the best way to innovate is to collaborate. And if you can bring about, suppose you've invented some, say, solution in one particular market. If hospitals can collaborate together, they have already a fix on it. And so we have the organization like CIMIT, based out of Boston. They have MIMIT in the UK, which is part of the NHS, which is the largest hospital chain, and Mass General in the US, which is again one of the largest hospital chains. And then we have in Norway and elsewhere in the world. So we have created something called the healthcare network, or the healthcare community. And so let's say that you have a challenge, in India, they could post it to this network and then get a fix for it. And instead of trying to invent the whole thing over and over and again. So one of the ways to reduce cost is to collaborate, and then innovate together. Instead of, trying to invest into the same issue, same challenge, and trying to find solution. If everybody could work together, if the best brains could work together, this is an example of collaborative innovation. And likewise, you could extend this to any other vertical, and we have succeeded there in other verticals too. But I would take that later on. But right now, I would like to let's say limit it to healthcare, because it's so important for worldwide challenges today.
Thanks, Vardarajan. In India, particularly in the healthcare sector, because a lot of healthcare is done by private hospitals, there's a lot of competition between them. So the sharing of information is very limited. Whereas what we see in Europe, as well as in Canada possibly, because healthcare is provided by the state, if you can collaborate and share the innovations as well as how you're curing patients faster, the costs for the public sector or the government can be brought down significantly, rather than every hospital trying to do it their own way. So the ecosystem, what Vardarajan was mentioning, brings all the hospitals together, doctors together, where they share even simple ideas. It need not be breakthrough ideas, even simple ideas of how you can discharge a patient 2 days before than what was actually planned, because the waiting list can be brought down and the costs of taking care of a patient in a hospital is much more than monitoring the patient from home using today's ICT technology. Another area what I wanted to cover today is governments are seen as slow in adopting ICT in their providing services to the citizens. Now, there's various opportunities for government to use today's technology like social media or internet to provide easy access to citizens. We talked about e-governance earlier. There are some initiatives which are successful, like in UK, there is a portal called Fix My Street, which is, as local community, you can go and complain about potholes on the street, street lighting, and all those things, and the community can act on that. And similarly, you have seen locally in India as well that for disaster management, ICT is a great help, because in Orissa, recently the cyclone, you would have read about it, we evacuated about 1 million people, and the casualties of Cyclone Feline were very low. And what was used, no high-tech technology, obviously, it was SMS. A lot of SMS was used to evacuate people, 1 million people. And the same cyclone which hit in 1999, 10,000 people lost their lives. And this time it was restricted to about 25 people. So what I wanted to pose is that how governments can adapt to innovation in ICT and use social media or other technologies to provide healthcare, education services, or citizen-centric services more effectively?
Yeah, I agree with Rakesh. If you read today's Mint, there is a article that in Orissa, they are informing villagers through SMS how elephant they are migrating from one place to another place. So this is a simple technology which they are using, but by this way, they are saving lots of crop and lots of human lives. So when it comes to e-governance, it is like a good governance. It is like a maximum governance, minimum government. Government has to come out with their integrated system where right now in India, with the help of e-governance governance program, they have already noted down various features or various working of every government where they are integrating all state government as well as central government functionalities. Starting from Aadhaar, they have already started, which is a UID project, they have already started capturing data of each and every human being who is living in India. They want to, so every state government or every local body, they can capture that data and utilize identifying those human beings. There are lots of e-governance programs which are happening in India, and when it comes to e-governance, Gujarat is one of the leading state. We take proud of e-governance. Otherwise, Bangalore and other area, they are market leaders when it comes to IT. So there are lots of things which government can take when huge population like India has. So issues are citizen redressal system, where there are lots of issues we are facing day in, day out, but how to pose or how to raise those issues, that is one challenge. So government is right now, and they have to look for social media where we can upload those issues like my street light is not working, and those local bodies can resolve those issues. There are flip parts where citizens are also harassing government officials by posing a wrong complaint, and those officers are facing lots of issues. But when it comes to e-governance, Canada also take advantage of what India is doing right now. I know from 1990, Canada has started doing something e-governance, and in 1999, they have started rolling out e-governance in various departments. But there are lots of good opportunities for Canada company to replicate Indian story into Canada, because we both the countries are sharing same kind of government structure, because we are Commonwealth countries. So Indian companies have lots of advantage doing business in Canada.
Rakesh, maybe we can take some questions.
Yeah, possibly the last point I wanted to mention before we get into questions is there's increasing consumerization of IT. Access to technology is much easier to you and me today compared to organizations and governments. That means you can buy, we did not have tablets some time back. You can buy a tablet, you can buy a phone, you can buy storage on cloud. Whatever you want, there is consumerization of IT. That is putting a lot of demand, and consumers as well as citizens are demanding that corporates and government use the same technology what they can buy off the shelf. So that is posing a huge challenge onto government, because if I can use social media and I'm active on social media, expectation is that government also communicates to me on social media. Why governments and private enterprise is not able to adapt to technology which as an ordinary citizen I can buy off the shelf. So this is posing an important challenge, and I just wanted to spend a few minutes before we go to Q&A on how governments and private enterprise is responding to it, as well as there are interesting challenges because of this, of security and other concerns.
Use of social media. Today you see every candidate who's worth his salt is using the social media very effectively, in India especially. And so, you see there's a maturity there that people are quickly adopted to this, and they see the reach, they see what it can do for them. It is already creating, a lot of brand equity for each and every individual concerned. That said, I wanted to tell you that governments have been slow to adopt these kind of technologies. I wanted to tell you about the US government, which is our customer. In 8 cities, 8 states, it has been adopted. And the issue was about security. The US government is paranoid about security. And I don't have to tell you too much about that. And so they said, in the cloud, they wanted the servers to be. So we are a system which works on the cloud. And so they said, we need to have a private cloud, something called a chain cloud. That is, you can imagine physically that some servers are distributed elsewhere in the world, kept away from the normal servers that are being used. And so they said they cannot work with the public servers that we're using. It should be different. So what I'm trying to tell you is they were innovative to, still to solve the security issue, but at the same time trying to use the cloud. So this is a good example of that.
So I think we are standing between you and lunch possibly, so we have to wrap up.
So Rakesh, maybe we can have just one question because we can address other questions offline at lunch. So Mario?
Yes, thank you. I'm Mario Pinto, Vice President of Research at Simon Fraser University in Vancouver, Canada. I'd just like to comment on the issue of healthcare. I think one of the biggest opportunities is going to be in manipulation of big data, right? In secure archiving, first of all, secure retrieval, secure interrogation with new data mining techniques, and presentation of those data with visual analytics. And I think here we have an opportunity for tremendous innovation between Canada and India. In Canada, we have already started the exercise to develop a national strategy for big data involving government organizations, universities, etc. We have some of the best data miners in the world, rated by Google. I think here, if we can be very imaginative in taking advantage of the ITC capability in India, we can leapfrog much faster than if we try to do it alone. We, for example, at SFU are already partnering with the Tata Consulting Services to try to map infectious diseases and also to map propensity for contraction of chronic diseases, right, in subpopulations. And it's working beautifully. So I think it's those kinds of partnerships that will lead to innovation, and mobile applications in the end will then lead to personalized medicine and preventive medicine, as you indicated, where one can then do preventive treatments at home. So I think we should think more imaginatively, but with a special focus. And that focus, I think, should be big data analysis. So, and if you'll permit me one shameless advertisement, and it comes back to your comment on how do you facilitate accelerated startups between India and Canada. Yesterday, His Excellency, the Governor General, inaugurated our digital media zone in partnership with Ryerson University, Simon Fraser University, and the Bombay Stock Exchange Institute. And this is an experiment that we decided would be worth doing to start up companies in India, and where we would provide soft landing pads for Canadian companies in India, and vice versa. We would then invite the Indian companies to our venture labs and our DMZ in Canada. So that would provide access to different markets. It would provide access to different capital. And so it's an experiment, and I don't want to give the impression that we're flying with this, but it's an experiment worth doing. It's where we really combine forces. So,
thank you. I would understand that's not a question, that's adding to our discussion. So thank you very much. But I would like to conclude, before Nadira concludes, that I think we covered this topic in detail, and we discussed how large companies can partner with small companies to innovate and continue to innovate. Otherwise, these companies would become irrelevant. I don't want to name the companies here. You know, many companies have become irrelevant over the last 10 to 15 years. And also, how governments can use the power of innovation in ICT to provide better healthcare, better education services, citizen-centric services. Similarly, the other area we should focus on, which was very well brought out by the gentleman, is how can we use the natural strength of Canada, which is a developed nation, rich in resources, rich in some industries, and the young population, which is talented and educated in ICT, to make the best for both the worlds. And I would like to conclude with one statement by Satya Nadella, a recent quote after he took over as the CEO of Microsoft. He said, our industry, ICT industry, does not respect tradition. It only respects innovation. Thank you.
Yeah. That was a very good conclusion. So I'll just say thank you very much to Rakesh, to Vardha, and to Jemin for being here with us today. And again, thank you to our session partners, to Jemin Shah for Dev Technologies and OpenText for supporting this session. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, we are just going to sign the MOU. So let us, I think.
Yes.
Now, Sarah, thank you. I think
going through an aging nation, I think we look forward very much to India to come along and work in partnership with Sri Lanka, Canada, and that will open up a new window. Thank you very much.
I'd just like to add that I last went to Sri Lanka about 10 years back, and this gives me a good excuse to come and visit Sri Lanka again. Thank you.